Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias.
These little ones aren't so little anymore. Definitely thirsty right now.
So we had 2 waters, but one of them broke. So I now just have one. I'm having to give them water multiple times a day right now. So I'm gonna have to definitely get a new water here pretty soon. When we first started off with this batch, we were taking the water out to the water hose and filling them up there and filling them up in the bathtub. And then I just said, hey, why don't we just fill up gallon jugs and then take them out there and add them to it. That's been so much easier. But they have grown a lot, and I'm definitely gonna have to get a new water. And it's hard to believe that the chicks are now 4 weeks old. It's just crazy. And the ducklings are pretty big. So it's gonna be interesting to see how big some of them turn out to be. And here recently, we've been having to really watch out for the chicks because they're really trying to use those wing muscles and taking flight. So I want to make sure they don't get out. Not a big deal if they get out. We can still get them inside of here, but I'm trying to keep an eye on that. So right now at this time of year, things are pretty much wrapping up for what we're growing and harvesting. We do have some greens that are still growing, like our bok choy right over there, as well as some lettuce, arugula, and kale. For the most part, other things are not really growing at this time. So sometime next month we'll beginning to start new starts in our trays. But we do have something growing, well, that has finished growing right now that needs to be harvested. And it's something we really haven't talked about or showed you in these videos. And let's go check them out. So right here we have loofah. And they're ready to be harvested. And these are growing in my wife's garden. So we're gonna grab her, show you how we harvest them, how we save the seed, as well as what she uses them for. So let's go get her.
I like the bomb effort.
All right, so we're right here under Lacie's loofahs that she's been growing now for the past few months in spring.
Oh yes, in spring.
And how have you been growing these exactly?
Well, it's just on a cattle panel. I used cattle panel and T-post and just made a trellis and planted them along the bottom, and they just grew all over.
So what inspired you to grow these things here?
Well, last year when you thought you were planting watermelon and we ended up with loofah, I really enjoyed growing them then, and there was a lot of fruit that just rotted and because it didn't have enough time to dry out, so I wanted to grow some more.
And when you started the loofahs, well, when I made the mistake of starting them when I thought they were watermelon, is I grew them from transplant. Somehow some seeds got mixed in with our watermelon seeds. And when I transplanted the watermelon, as they started to grow, I started saying, man, these don't look like watermelons. I was also growing cucumbers in the area as well. They don't look like watermelon or cucumbers. And then they had some fruit on it. I was like, I'm gonna try it. It doesn't look anything like a cucumber or a watermelon. So I took a bite of it and I was like, it doesn't taste like that either. So I brought it into you and you're like, That's a loofah.
And you can eat loofah. You can eat them when they're young, and then whenever they're older and they dry out, then you can clean them up and use them for sponges, you know, scrubbies, all kinds of good stuff.
So when we started, or when you start a loofah, you can start them. You can do a direct sow or transplant. And here in this garden, I think you did a direct sow here.
I think I transplanted a few, but I think I also direct sowed some. But we've actually had loofah plants growing all over from where I was harvesting seeds last year, and seeds just got scattered all over the ground. So they're really easy to grow.
And now that we have them, they've grown here. It's time to harvest them now. So how do you actually harvest these things?
Well, you just clip it off.
And then
That's
bang,
the first
you have
thing.
your fruit.
And I forgot to tell you how you can tell if they're dry. Well, first, you can normally hear seeds rattling around in them, but if you go up to them, and sometimes it'll fall out by itself, but the end, not the end you clipped it off of, but the other end that's hanging down, see how easy that just kind of opens up and it's hollow in there? That is whenever you know that it's ready to process it.
So, whoops, next what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and harvest all these loofahs that we have right here. And then Lacey's gonna go over how you process them after you harvest them.
It's done, all done. Time flies, I know that's for sure. Yeah. You're gone. I'm not your prisoner in your cover anymore. Oh no. But I have a feeling that we can move on.
Okay, I'm noticing that there's some that feel really wet with water. So what do you do about these? Are these just completely gone?
They probably are.
Can you dry them out in the greenhouse?
Well, I did some of that last year, but they ended up kind of getting moldy, and then they weren't as sturdy of a loofah. These were nice and green, and then the frost came, and so some people say that you can harvest them whenever they're still green, but it's like a lot more work. And I already had a lot that I saw were drying out on the vine, so I didn't even want to mess with it because I knew I would have enough.
So I want to try something with these loofahs that are holding this moisture. I want to try putting them by the wood stove and seeing if the wood stove that can just suck the moisture with the dry air inside the house right by the wood stove, just suck it out and dry these up so they can be used. But we do have a number of that Lacie has just harvested, plenty to use. And plenty for you to use.
That's more than we would ever use in 1 year.
So, plenty there. Alrighty, now that we have all these loofahs here, what in the world are we gonna do with them? How do you use these things? Actually, you have a pretty interesting use for these. It's something that you grow in the garden to actually use as you're taking a bath.
Yeah, people have been using loofahs for I don't know how long. For washcloths, for scrub pads, for all different kinds of things. So that's what I like to use it for.
And I bet people are wondering, how do you turn this into a scrubby brush or a scrub pad?
Get out of my face. See what I gotta do with it? See what I gotta do with it? Well, I'm gonna show you how to process this. It's super easy. As long as they're totally dried out, it's a really easy process.
All right, let's make me a scrubby brush.
Okay, the first thing we need to do is take the seeds out of these. So the easiest way is to get you a clean bucket. Grab your loofah. And when I said, you know, about the end of it, how it comes off, it breaks off just like that. Well, you're gonna take that end. You're gonna take this, and then you're just gonna beat it like that. And a lot of the seeds are gonna come out. And you hear there's more seeds in there, and they'll come out as you go, but sometimes I even like squeeze some. But I want to show you just from this one loofah mean, that's just a little bit of the seeds. So, you really only need to grow loofah one time and save your seeds year after year, and you will have plenty of loofah seeds to share with all your friends.
And as you're getting the seeds out of it, you're just banging something at the same time, making a lot of noise. Just have a little fun.
It's a great thing for kids to do, probably.
There you go. I bet our kids would love it. We should have them do that.
Put them to work. So you get as many seeds out as you can, and then your next step is you're going to need some hot water. So I've seen a lot of people, they just fill up their tub and do a bunch at one time, but I'm not going to process all of these today. So I'm just going to use my sink, and it's really simple, just if you have a few that you want to process. So the first thing we do is we're just going to take it and we're going to put it in the hot water just like this. And another thing you can do is you can run hot water in it like this to get it all soft. And see, it starts getting where you can squeeze it. So when it gets wet, it starts becoming more and more pliable. So I just kind of squeeze it down in there, and you can just leave it for 5 or 10 minutes. But I've found if they're really good and tried out, it just starts to peel off right away. Now when you get to the top that was attached to the vine, you have these little pieces right here, and they'll just pull down, and it's almost like a zipper, and it'll just help you pull them off. The first time I ever grew loofah was last year when Mike thought he was growing watermelon. But I've enjoyed growing them. So now I'm just going to take all the peel and put it in a bowl, and that can go out to compost. I don't want all this getting stuck in my drain. So here you go. Here is all the outside skin taken off, and I mean, it looks a little dark right there, and there is, sometimes you can feel it's kind of slimy, kind of soapy, so you want to wash that. We're going to wash it real good and wash that off, and with just water, just using water.
So at what point do you know when you're finished washing it off, when it's ready?
Well, if you feel it, there's almost like a little bit of a slickness to it. It's not quite slimy, but it's a little slick. But whenever it feels just kind of rough, that's whenever I feel like it's done. And sometimes you'll find places that have kind of gone bad and have a rotten spot in it. But, I mean, you can cut it off and use what you want. And some of this darkness, if you let it just stay out in the sun, just lay it out in the sun and let the sun bleach it out, some of that will go away. But this one, probably I waited a little too long to harvest. I mean, it's still good, but it probably won't last as long as the other ones. Now, I did this one last night with the same thing, and just see how much prettier it is. And I feel like this will probably hold up better than this one in the long run. But they're still both perfectly fine to use.
So let's go ahead and process one more loofah to show them a better example of one that is actually being processed that looks pretty good.
Okay, there we go. I think this one, it probably looks the best out of all the ones I've processed so far.
So I must say, that loofah looks a lot better than the one before that. Big time difference.
It does. It looks really good. Now the first one that I did, you know, it's kind of black, and I told you there's a bad spot in it, and I think I know why this one looks kind of funky and it just isn't as pretty. This one was laid, I think, on top of the trellis, and so it didn't have as good an airflow. As you can tell, you know, see it has grown into the side of something. And I believe these were actually hanging straight down, so they had a good amount of airflow and they were able to dry out really good. And there's only a couple places that look, I don't know, maybe mildewy and all, but this other one is like covered in it. So whenever you grow them, if you can, which you normally, whenever they're little, you can just adjust them and let them grow in another place, and that's what I should have done with this one.
So now we have our very own sponges here, homegrown, directly from your garden.
Yes.
And ready to use. And you use these in a number of different ways. You use them in the kitchen to wash dishes and things like that.
Yeah, you can cut them up in lots of different ways. One way that most people do it is they just, you know, make slices, and you can use them, you know, to wash dishes. You can use them in the shower. And using it in the bathtub, one thing I really do like, so I'll cut it and have around. But you know, all of those homemade soaps that people have, whenever they sit in water, they really almost disintegrate because they get so soft. So you can take one and cut it, and then you can put your soap on top of it and sit it on the edge, so it lets air circulate around your soap, so your soap lasts longer. You can also cut a larger chunk and cut down one of the tubes and open it up and make like your own washcloth out of it. And the best thing is that whenever they have, you know, they're not useful anymore and you don't find them useful, throw them in your compost pile instead of throwing them in the trash.
Much better than any of the synthetic chemicalized ones that they make that are just going to be in the landfill sitting somewhere. But these actually break down and go return back to the earth, so you get your use out of it, and then it goes back to continuing to give in the ways of the earth. But as you're scrub-a-dub-dubbing in the tub, you use these to help clean your body as well, and it has benefits for like exfoliating your skin,
Yeah.
getting rid of the dead skin, as well as helping blood flow and circulation through the skin.
Lots of benefits. And it's a great pollinator attractor. I mean, the bumblebees were all over the vines and flowers, and they're pretty. They are such pretty yellow flowers, so they're a good addition to anybody's garden.
Yeah.
And another thing is that we had mentioned earlier, you can eat them whenever they're really young and they haven't developed all this fibrous insides, and they taste a lot like zucchini. We've had it before and we really enjoyed it. So it can go from being grub to being your scrub.
There we go. I can't remember the saying, scrub-a-dub-tub or scrub-a-dub-dub in the tub, rub-a-dub-tub in the tub. I don't know. Can't remember. But we have a number of these, and since we have so many, Lacey's going to offer these for sale for anyone who would like to buy some. So how much do you want to sell a full-size sponge for?
A full size we're going to sell for $20 a piece.
And we're going to sell some of the seeds as well for those of you who want to start your own seeds. And how much are you selling those for?
We're going to do $5 for a pack of seeds.
And if you would like to purchase either the seeds or a full-size loofah, you can just send Lacie an email, and we'll include our email in the show notes below, farmfitmail@gmail.com. Also, I do want to mention that our friend Ben Cohen has a book on saving seeds. He doesn't go over loofahs in here, but he covers so many other plants that can help you learn how to save your own seeds. So he is offering a discount for those of you, 15% off his new book, and it's really neat and very colorful. And the foreword has been written by Jer Gettle, the owner of Baker Creek. So if you would like to purchase that book, all these items would be great gifts for everyone buying gifts at this time of year. Check out the show notes below for that as well.
Well, one reason I like Ben's book is it just goes over, you know, some plants, they can't be within, you know, a certain amount of distance from a different variety of the same plant. So he goes over all of that in his book. And I found that that's such valuable information, because some people don't know that, you know, a different type of mustard green can, you know, cross with a different, you know, if you have two different varieties growing. So it's great for spacing. It's great for, there's tons of knowledge about saving seeds.
And knowing that is very beneficial if you are trying to preserve certain characteristics within the heirloom varieties to continue on without the cross-pollination going to lose some of those characteristics. So he covers that information and so much more in that book. So I think it's time to go scrub-a-dub-dub in the tub with your loofah sponge here. Well, that's it for now. We'll see you next time. And as always, be strong and grow on.
Bye, guys.
Kept running in the woods alone and still.